Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts, and welcome to my craft room. Anyone who's been here for a while knows that I enjoy sewing my scraps to the register tape to use them in different projects or to kind of basically use them as a piano keyboarder on larger quilts and such. And as you might imagine, I do get lots of questions about different aspects of it. So I thought I'd put up this video to show you answer one of the questions that I get a lot. A lot of times people can't find the calculator tape. I just purchased mine from Amazon. They have different widths and they come in large packages. It would probably be better to go in it with a friend because a lot of times you're getting 5 or 10 rolls. And yeah, that's miles and miles of paper that you would have to be a really dedicated scrap user to use that all up. Sometimes you can get smaller rolls, and like I said, they come in different widths. This one that I use a lot is a 3 1/4. Then I also have a 2 1/4. One of my subscribers was sweet and sent me a small 2 1/4. This one is definitely, I believe this is a register tape because can you almost see how it's got a blue tint to it? When you put a hot iron to it, one side of it all turns blue and the other stays white. So I'm assuming that this is probably a thermal paper. Now, I've warned you before in the videos that thermal paper is not the best for this project, but you can use it. From what I've heard and what I've read online is there's some type of a chemical in the thermal paper that will react with your fabric and it'll weaken it and cause it to deteriorate. Kind of like how you're supposed to use archival ink and paper if you're doing scrapbooking and stuff so that it lasts a lifetime. But there's a real simple solution to that. If you're going to use thermal tape, after you're done sewing a session, just go ahead and cut your paper off here. I like to leave mine attached to the roll at the moment, and then just remove the paper. And removing the paper, I'll link a video up there in the iCard on how easy it is to remove. And then you don't have to worry about any of the chemicals in the thermal paper reacting to your fabric, and there won't be any problems in the future. My only suggestion there is after you remove the paper, maybe if you just gently kind of, instead of rolling it tight, like with this paper in it, I can go ahead and roll it up really tight and not worry about it because the paper is keeping all the edges from any bias edges there might be from stretching or fraying. But if you were going to take all your paper out, I'd suggest maybe just kind of folding it over a few inches and giving it one of these types of moves instead of rolling it tight. That way you're not going to have to worry about any of your fabric bias edges getting stretched out of whack. So like I said, you can buy this at Amazon. You can go to Staples, at Office Max, Office Depot. You can probably find some at Walmart. I'm not 100% sure. A lot of people have found them at thrift stores. It's one of those things that if you're no longer using one of those calculators like this with the little tape that comes out, like the accountants always used in the past, they'll take them up to their thrift stores and donate them. But I do have some options for you today in case you can't find these rolls or just don't want to buy a big roll. Maybe you want to test out this way of sewing scraps before you commit to having an extra product in your house. It's back to school time, so you can always use some school paper. Now, the school papers are generally about 8.5 by 11. Right now, I've seen packages of the bundles of 200 sheets for some places 25 cents, some places 50 cents. And I know it's too big of a sheet, but what you can do is you can just trim it down. I generally have 2 rotary cutters plus a few extra, but this is the one I use for fabric and this is the one I use for paper. When this blade starts to get a little bit dull and it's getting a little dangerous for me to cut, like I might slip and cut my fingers, I just transfer it over to the paper one. And if I haven't used my paper one very often, I just have a container that says old and I put all my old blades in that. And then I can transfer them to the paper one. And then I have another container that says trash on it. So when these blades are completely dull and they're not usable anymore, I put them in there because I don't want to just throw them in the garbage can because I wouldn't want anyone to cut their fingers because even though they say dull and we can't cut fabric or paper with them anymore, pretty sure you're going to be able to slice your finger or your toe. Why is your toe in the garbage? I don't know, but you could slice your toe, right? So I take my paper one, and now with this too, we're pretty much set in the sizes here. Now I could either trim it down after I put the fabric on or trim it before. But if I want a specific size, let's say I just want a 1.5 inch strip, or maybe I want a large one for a 5-inch border. I can just take my ruler, pick my size. Maybe I want 5 inches. Maybe I just want it to be 1.5. Now, can you still use the one with the holes in it? Sure, why not, right? Now, even if you were to sew right through here and your stitches, you're going to be sewing the 2 fabric pieces together. You're not keeping the paper on the strip, so it doesn't matter if your stitches just go through the fabric and not through any paper. And then you're like, oh, Robin, but you've got that long strip. Well, it's okay, because after you sew this one and after you sew this one, you can just put them together and stitch them together right there, and now you've got a longer strip. So you can do that before you put the paper on, after you take the paper off. You can leave the paper on and store it like this, take the paper off. Really, this is one of those things that you can almost not go wrong. And what happens if you do go wrong? It's just a scrap project. Cut out the piece that's a problem and go back to it and start all over again. So now I got 3 different sizes here. All right, so you don't want to go to the store and buy any school paper, because once again, 100, 200 sheets, that's a lot of scraps, and you're not going to be using the paper for grocery lists or anything. What else could we find around the house to use? I don't know about you guys, but I still get phone books. This phone book was actually underneath, you know, one of those 3-drawer carts with the little wheels on the bottom? My wheels always break off, so I had the wheels in the front are perfect, but the 2 wheels in the back were broken. So this is actually holding up my cart until I want to use it for something. Now, normally I would pull these pages out and do a string quilt, where you can sew your fabric on diagonally, or you can sew it this way if you choose. And then you cut them into squares and you can have fun that way. But you can also just pull this out and cut this into the strips of the size you want, the same way we did with the school paper, and use an old telephone book. These pages are so nice and thin, and if they're good enough for people to make their string quilts, then we're basically doing the same process. We're just making piano key borders or using them as fun accents instead of actual blocks. Okay, maybe you don't get phone books. What else do we have? I got my Connecting Threads magazine. Now, I've already gone through here, and I like to cut out the patterns that I like, and I put them in a wish book so that I can flip through to get ideas, or if I want to go back and buy the pattern. But these pages in this type of magazine are very thin still, and these are very easy to stitch through and then tear and remove. Now, this might be just a little bit on the thicker side. I wouldn't want to go any thicker than this type of paper. But if you have, maybe you could use a newspaper, but then you got the chance of getting the ink all over your hands. But you're supposed to be able to go either to an art supply store or to one of your news, like ours is the news press, so a newspaper, wherever they make your newspaper, and you can actually buy newsprint, which is something like this. This came with, I believe I'd ordered some cat food, and this came in as the wrapping, and I always save it. But you can see how very thin this is and how easy it rips. You can once again slice this, and this one is, this one's probably about 25 inches wide, and I have 3 rolls of this that I've saved. So I can cut this into any sizes I want. I can cut it into the squares to do the string quilts, or I can cut it into the strips to do the scrappy calculator tape. Then you might say, well, Robin, that's all and good, but I don't order things online, or I don't order anything large enough to come with shipping paper in it like that, because I always get it with the bubble stuff. What else can I do? Well, I don't know about you, but I go a little wrapping paper crazy. I bought a lot of wrapping paper many, many years ago at an after Christmas sale, and I got all the ones I liked. And then my kids got older, and you were only wrapping like video games or a couple little packages. So I've got probably 20 or 30 rolls of wrapping paper and no presents to wrap. That's all right. I have presents to wrap. But if you were to have some, now the Dollar Tree has some really thin and cheap wrapping paper, or if you, like I said, you have some leftover Christmas ones. Now my wrapping paper here, it's got the lines on it. It's a little bit sturdy, but it's still pretty easy to tear. I think your best option, see what you have in your wrapping paper, see how thick it is. If it's like the Dollar Tree kind where you can actually put it over a Monopoly game box and you can still read the words Monopoly through it, then it's perfect for this. Measure out how much you'd like, cut it off the roll, and then I would probably, you could fold it, because this is an awfully long piece. You know how long wrapping paper tubes are. You can fold it up and cut some strips, or you can cut it this way so it's only like 12 inches long, and then you can just chop it down that way. But wrapping paper would be a good option for that also. I wouldn't be using tissue paper because tissue paper is definitely too thin. It would not stand up to the sewing. But if you just go ahead and look around your house, I'm sure you can find something that can take the place of this calculator tape or the register tape. So you too can start sewing scraps down. I'm going to try to keep coming up with different ideas to show you different projects for these. Now some of them might not be very fancy, but they'll still use up these scraps. And for those who just wanted to try this out, but like I said, you didn't want to have the expense of buying a big roll or you couldn't find it anywhere locally, go ahead and look through your house and find one of these options. I'm sure there's going to be something that's of a thin paper that you can go ahead and use. So if anyone else has any ideas of things people could use instead of these rolls of paper, please go ahead and leave them in the comments to help everyone out. Plus, hey, it's a great way to recycling, right? That's it for me this week. I'll see you next time. Bye.